All right. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rachel Herbst, and I am the admissions coordinator here at UB School of Law. I want to thank you all for joining us on our third event of our 2021 Virtual Open House Week. I have about 8 slides to cover, so we'll have plenty of time for questions at the end. And I'm really excited to go over some tips for you all on submitting your strongest law school application. So let's get started. I'm sure we have a range of students here today, from those who are extremely familiar with the Law School Admissions Council to those who, maybe are sophomores and juniors who just made that exciting decision to pursue a law degree and start thinking about the application process. So for those of you who are not familiar, the Law School Admissions Council is the gatekeeper to all of the law schools across the country. Their acronym is LSAC. You will hear that very often. So the first thing that you are going to want to do when you make that decision to apply is to create a free account at lsac.org. Everything is going to be done through that account. And I recommend doing that fairly early on in the process because there's a lot of resources available to prospective applicants. And one of the things that includes is access to the Khan Academy official LSAT preparation tool. Applying to law school and law school overall is an investment. So if you have those free opportunities, I highly recommend taking advantage of those. So within that account, you will have 2 aspects of your application. One is the application that each law school creates. So we write our own application that you'll have access to. And then the other side of that is what is called the credential assembly service that I will talk more in depth about a little bit later. So the next thing you will want to start to think about is registering and preparing for an entrance exam. We accept both the LSAT, the LSAT and the GRE. In 2019, we started to accept the GRE, and not all law schools accept it. So a few things you will want to take into consideration when choosing is, are you applying to multiple law schools and what do they accept? The LSAT is nationally accepted as the law school admissions test, of course. However, maybe you're considering pursuing a dual degree or a combined degree, and that other graduate program accepts the GRE. So you want to take that instead. That way you're only taking, one exam. Because if you do take both the LSAT and the GRE, the LSAT is what the admissions committee is going to rely more heavily on, because that will be released if it is a valid score from LSAC. Another thing you will want to consider, if you're applying to just UB, no other dual programs, and you just want to say, well, which exam, should I take? Which one will I do better on? They are very different exams. The LSAT is one composite score with a writing sample that is not scored. However, the admissions committee does see it, and it is a required component. Well, the GRE has 3 separate sections: the verbal, quantitative, and analytical writing section, which is scored as well. So I highly suggest to students who are, going back and forth between the two to do your research, take a practice test if you can, look at some example questions, and take the one that plays to your skill set, which one you feel more confident in, and make that choice between one or the other, because it's going to take a lot of time to prepare for that exam. So, choose one and dive right into it. Previously, I mentioned the CAS report, the Credential Assembly Service, as part of the requirement when you apply. This is through LSAC, and it is a subscription that you apply to, and it is $195. However, the benefit of this is it compiles your official transcripts, your letters of recommendation, and if you choose to take the LSAT, your LSAT score and rating sample in one nice report. That way, you only have to send your transcripts in once. Your recommenders only have to send their letters in one time. and that package gets sent to any school that you're applying to. There is a $45 fee to report out your CAS to a school. I would say register for that about 6 to 8 weeks before you're planning to apply or that application deadline, because it takes time for LSAC to receive those transcripts, to process them, for your references to upload their letters. Maybe they made a choice to mail them in. So definitely do that ahead of time. That also gives you time, because for official transcripts, you need to send in everything. Take a look through your undergraduate transcript. If there's a transfer credit on there, we need that transcript from that original school. Maybe you took a one class over the summer at a school that was closer to home and you forgot about it. We'll definitely notice that and reach out and ask for you to submit that original transcript. So giving yourself some time, and B, looking through your transcript ahead of time to make sure you're not missing any of those classes from another institution. Also, if you've done any graduate coursework, make sure those are sent in as well. For letters of recommendation, when you are filling out your application through LSAC, you will put in their contact information, and they will be contacted directly by LSAC, and they will upload their letter of recommendation. So definitely give them a heads up about that process so that they're expecting it. And again, everything's going to be done through that LSAC account. One tip I recommend is, since that LSAT writing sample is administered separately, you're allowed to access that 8 days ahead of your test date. And I highly recommend making sure that you get that completed before your test date. You don't want to put it off. It's extremely important for your application. The committee looks at it, and your CAS report will not be released unless you have that. So make sure that you get that done and out of the way. So let's dive into some more of the specifics of, some application materials that you'll need to submit. A required piece is the personal statement. And the committee is primarily looking for two things in your personal statement. They want to learn more about who you are, and they want to assess your ability to communicate effectively, clearly, and in an organized and concise manner. Writing is extremely important to your success in both law school and practice, and they want to be able to know that you're a coachable writer, and they'll look at both your personal statement and your LSAT writing sample or GRE analytical writing section, to analyze that. So our personal statement actually does not have a writing or essay prompt. So I think that might be a little bit more challenging on where to start. But some tips on that. The focus should be on you. The committee will have access to your transcripts, your letters of recommendation, your resume. So make sure you're not rewriting, what they've already read. This is the best opportunity to convey who you are, maybe sharing life experience, what you'll bring to the classroom, or why you want to pursue a law degree. Some themes you might want to consider, to spark some ideas are: what motivates you? What are your career ambitions? What personal experience led you down this path to pursue law school? Or what do you want to do with your law degree? What impact do you want to have on society post-law school? And most importantly, just be yourself. That's extremely important here, is being authentic. Write in a voice, write in your own voice. Don't rely too heavily on samples or templates. However, on my slide, I do have a link to our admissions blog that gives you tips and samples, but use it as a guide, not necessarily that this is the answer to a perfect personal statement. Make sure you make it, sound like it's coming from you. Don't use words or phrases you wouldn't use in your own writing or conversation. It's pretty obvious when an applicant, is not being authentic and those words, don't come naturally to them. Also, I want to touch on page limits. No more than 2 pages, double-spaced, 12-point font. The admissions committee has a lot to read, especially if you add in some of these optional items. So try to keep it to 2 pages, please. So there are 3 optional writing pieces that you can add. Before I go into those, I do want to say anything that you submit that is, written, personal statement, obviously your writing sample, this Why Buffalo diversity addenda, these are all samples of your academic writing. So although content is extremely important, so is grammar, structure, just make sure that you take your time on all of these pieces. So you can add a Why Buffalo statement. This is an opportunity to tell us why you're interested in pursuing your law degree at the University of Buffalo. Do you have a connection to the school or the Western New York community? Maybe there's a concentration or curricular program that you're specifically interested in, or a clinic, or maybe you really want to study under a specific faculty member. That's where you're going to highlight that. That response should be about a page in length. Again, double-spaced, 12-point font. I won't continue to say that because every one of these should be double-spaced in 12-point font. Another option is adding a diversity statement. So this is where you can describe how your background or experiences will enhance the diversity and give different perspective to the University at Buffalo School of Law and in the classroom. This can be based on a lot of different things. It can be your culture, race, ethnicity, religion, socioeconomic status, academic background, employment, gender identity, personal experience. It can fall within any of those categories that enhances the diversity of the school. And this should be around a page or 2. And this should be distinct from your personal statement. So it should feel very different. We've talked recently about, somebody who personal statement maybe felt a little bit more like a diversity statement, and their diversity statement maybe felt more like a personal statement, as they started writing. So do know that you have the opportunity for a diversity statement and a personal statement, so you can separate the 2. You can also add an addenda, and this is an opportunity to address maybe a weak component of your application, to explain a special circumstance you had to overcome in the course of your education. Maybe in your first semester of undergrad, you were a chemistry major and you realized fairly quickly that chemistry was not for you, or it was just that transition from high school to college was a little bit difficult and your grades weren't where you wanted them to be. But then from there on out, they skyrocketed, and you can see that. Add in that addenda, make it short and concise, explain what happened that semester. Your transcript's going to talk for itself and show, and back that up and show that as soon as you switched majors or you acclimated to the school, you excelled. This should be about a paragraph or 2. And remember, again, that it's a sample of your writing. All right, the resume. Again, this is another opportunity to give some context to who you are. In terms of format, just make sure it's professional, clean, neat, easy to read. Page length, we don't, have a minimum page length. We don't say that it should be 1 page. Maybe if I was talking to you about applying to a job, I would recommend it being 1 page. This is a little bit differently. We want to see everything that you've done. So if you require a second page, feel free to do so. The committee is looking for evidence of a strong work ethic, social and professional engagement. And it's not required, but if you've done community service or you had leadership experience, maybe you did research in undergrad or were involved in extracurricular activities, add those on there, academic honors. And then, of course, your professional work experience. Your resume really should demonstrate how you've contributed to your academic, professional, and social environment. And it'll help us get to know you better. So also include part-time jobs, even if it was non-legal related. If you held a part-time job while being a full-time student, that really shows, that you're able to have that school work balance. And that's a pretty big commitment and shows your character. It's important to, this resume gives context to, those numerical factors. So your GPA and your LSAT, they don't tell a whole story without giving some background. So that's what I want you to think of this, while you're filling this out. Don't rush through it. Take your time. It is important for the committee to see, you as a whole person rather than just numerical factors. And then tips on this, just be professional, be consistent, and proofread everything that you submit. There's also a blog post link on here to some resume templates that we have posted. Letters of recommendation. These are critically important. They complete your academic profile. We strongly encourage academic letters if you're a student that has graduated in the past 2 years. So these will be letters from professors, lecturers, even teaching assistants if they've taught you directly. It would be great to see academic letters from those faculty who've maybe taught you in more than just one class. And in your undergraduate department would also be great. Definitely take time and choose carefully who you are asking to be a recommender. Maybe consider a professor whose class you did well in, who can really comment on your ability to grow and develop and improve over time. You had a relationship with them. You went to office hours. You're still in contact with them. If you've been out of school for more than 2 years, letters from current or former employers will suffice. If you can talk to them and if they can speak on your academic ability and your professional skills, that would be great. For those of you, you might question, well, I am a current student or I graduated less than 2 years ago. You can have both academic and professional letters. We only need one letter to complete your profile. However, we recommend 2 to 3. So if you have 2 academic and 1 professional, that would be great. So if your recommender says, well, what should I put in there? The most effective letters will highlight your academic qualifications and your ability to think and write critically and your strength as a student or a professional, depending on who's writing it. And it can include your motivation, leadership potential, professionalism, intellectual curiosity, anything along those lines. As you see on the screen in red, underlined, very important, please do not submit personal recommendations from family, friends, members of a clergy, politicians. You have a friend who's a lawyer or a judge. Their comments aren't typically useful in evaluating your academic qualifications. And usually what we see is the committee just says that they're disappointed that the student wasn't able to secure a academic or professional letter. They can't speak on you as a employee or a student. So I would steer you away from that. Again, I touched on we require 1 letter and accept up to 4. My tip here is to meet with your recommenders in advance. If you can, give them a transcript, give them your resume, and maybe a draft of your personal statement, just so they can get that full picture of your qualifications, your interest in law school. If you haven't met with them recently, they can give that'll all give some context and a bigger picture of your interest in law school. All right, if you joined us yesterday for the JD information session, you may have seen this admissions timeline, but I'm gonna quickly run through it. Every year, our applications go live on September 1st, and our early decision is November 15th. All of your application materials need to be in by November 15th, and you will receive your decision on December 15th, so a month later. Our priority deadline is March 1st. We recommend getting your application in on or before that because it's your best opportunity for scholarships. Our scholarship pot is still very plentiful. We're just starting to review applications after March 1st. That's when we get most of our applications. So if you want to be early, get it in before then. Especially this next date, April 15th. That's the deposit deadline for admitted students. So on that day, that's when we're, securing those scholarship funds. People are filling seats. So after that date, we're starting to diminish our scholarships. And then May 1st is the housing application deadline, another thing to take into consideration. So some key takeaways. There's no perfect equation to admission. The admissions committee uses a holistic review process and considers each component of the application, numerical and non-numerical components. So, if you feel really confident in your undergraduate GPA and your entrance exam, it doesn't mean you can skip out on writing a strong personal statement or resume or having, strong letters of recommendation. Those all, like I said, give context and really play into, who are we putting in a classroom in our school. Proofread, make sure you're taking your time on everything. And when in doubt, ask admissions. Not just ask admissions, but take and use their advice. Lindsay, our Vice Dean of Admissions, has been doing this in some fashion for 16 years. Kristen, who is on with us, she's been here about 7. They know what they're talking about. Take their advice and use it. We're just here to help you. Some upcoming things, or if you want to personally ask us questions, you can set up a Zoom or phone appointment on our website. We will also be at the LSAC Digital Law School Forum. That's happening Saturday, December 4th. That has live workshops throughout the day, a resource center. There's pre-law advisors there to answer questions. There's an LSAC info booth, a financial aid booth, and diversity booth. We also have some more events happening this week. Tonight we have the alumni panel, and tomorrow we have the student Q&A panel. We also have a BA JD combined 3+3 program info session coming up in December. If you want to contact any of our student ambassadors, who maybe didn't make it to the panel on Friday, they're available on our website to reach out to. And we also have a virtual tour on our website. All right, so that concludes my presentation. I'm going to open it up. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and open it up to questions. Let's take a look at the chat. All right. So please feel free to add your questions into the chat, or if you're comfortable and you want to turn your camera on and unmute, please feel free to throw any questions at me. I'll give everyone a moment. Is there a timeline for regular applicants to hear back? It definitely depends on when you apply. After that March 1st deadline, things kind of get backed up a little bit. It's safe to say 4 to 6 weeks after. It might be a little bit faster if you applied in December or January than if you applied later in March or April. If our personal statement is over 2 pages, is that considered acceptable? It is. I would try to keep it, if it's a sentence or 2 on a 3rd page, that's okay. as close to 2 pages as you can. If it starts to get towards 3, I would, maybe cut back a little. Also take into consideration if you're adding additional writing pieces as well, if you're doing a Why Buffalo or diversity statement. Somebody told me admissions does not consider your graduate school GPA if you go to graduate school. Is that true? No, it's not calculated. LSAC calculates your undergraduate GPA. And if you look at our median GPA for a 3-year JD profile, that's what's considered. They will definitely look at your graduate school GPA. It's on there. They take it into consideration. Maybe, not as heavily as your undergraduate GPA, but they do take it into consideration. Hello, I see the FAFSA application deadline is the same as the general application. Would we submit them at the same time, or can we do one before the other? You could do one before the other. They are completely separate. And if you have any questions about FAFSA, UB has a main financial aid office that will be able to help you with that. So we might be able to get a link in there if you have any questions regarding that FAFSA. Would you suggest the students pick a specific topic for their personal statement or talk about their experience more broadly? I think it depends, and I think it's personal preference. I think if you're trying to hit on too many different things, it might not feel like there's a structure to it. I think if there's 1 or 2 or 3 things that you're trying to hit on and they kind of flow into each other, the main thing I would consider is how it sounds and flows together and if they're related or not. I wouldn't try to just shove every experience you've ever had into one essay. Because there's also your Why Buffalo or diversity statement, if you have something to add in there. I hope that answers that. If it doesn't, feel free to add into the chat. What would you say the most heavily weighted component of the application is? That's a difficult question. There isn't one thing in the application that is, a make it or break it point. It really is a holistic review process, and they look at everything combined. Your LSAT score is weighted fairly heavily, as well as your undergraduate GPA, but so are your letters of recommendation. So I would look at the application as a whole rather than pieces. If we apply for a dual program with another school at UB, do we need to indicate that anywhere on our law school application or just proceed with applying to schools separately? There is a spot on the application to add if you're interested in a combined degree program. So I would mark it there. That way we just track it and can talk to you if you got into the other school or accepted both, and which school you want to go to first, because you will defer either law school or the other school. And that way we can just keep track of that. What are your projections for this year's applicant pool? That is difficult. It's still very early on, so it's really hard to predict what's going to happen. We'll definitely have a better idea of that towards the end of this year. When would you apply for a concentration if interested? You'll start thinking about that at the end of your 1L first year. You'll apply to that going into your second year. So you'll work with your faculty advisor, our registrar's office, to apply into that and start planning your schedule for the fall of your 2L year. You are welcome. Is there advice that students from technical backgrounds provide their recommenders for a tailored submission for letters of recommendation, such as maintaining a focus on critical thinking background publications? visit students from that's a difficult one. Any advice for technical backgrounds? I would approach it the same way as a non-technical background. I think they're still speaking on, who you were in the classroom, your work ethic, critical thinking, like you mentioned. I think, Kristen, did you unmute yourself?
Yeah, so I think I've spoken with Anoop before.
Okay.
Certainly, you'll be able to provide your recommenders with information about why you're pursuing a legal degree and how you would like to marry your undergraduate degree with your law degree. And so, explaining that to your recommenders may give them some insight into how to approach your letter of recommendation. But we certainly have students from different technical, hard science backgrounds that do very well and are able to provide sufficient letters of recommendation.
Thank you. You mentioned applying for a concentration after 1L. Does that mean there is a certain student limit for each concentration? No, I don't believe that there is a limit for each concentration. It's something that you work with your faculty advisor in the registrar's office, just in terms of, do you want to add in? Is that?
Oh, no, I was just backing you up. Yep.
Right. No student limit. Yeah, that's just, your faculty advisor just works with you in terms of, making sure you're on the right path, the courses are available that you want. So no student limit. You're welcome. Any other questions? I'll give everyone a moment. If you want me to add to any of these explanations of these questions that I didn't go in depth enough about, please feel free to add that in as well. If you want to hear more about any aspect of the application, just add it in the chat. Should we wait to submit our applications until our letters of recs are in? No, not necessarily. If you have everything else ready, feel free to submit it. Your CAS report will not be released until your letters of recommendation are in. So your application will just sit incomplete until those are in. My only thing to think about is if you have more than one letter of recommendation and you don't want your application reviewed without it, if one came in, that would mark it as complete. So we would send it over. So you can either wait to submit everything until multiple letters are in, or you can also reach out to us and say, I have 3 letters coming in. Just make sure all 3 are in before it gets submitted. How can applicants track the progress of their applications once submitted? So once you apply, you will receive an email for your online status checker. So you can log in, you use your LSAC credentials, and it'll show the progress of your application moving through the process. So if it's incomplete, you'll see that there. If it's ready for review, you'll see that in there. And that's a great way to track it. And definitely pay attention to that, because if you believe your application should have been complete and it's not, usually I will reach out, and let you know why. I will reach out and let you know why. But if you see something that, your application should be in a different stage, you can reach out and email us. How will admissions communicate my decision? So you'll see it on your online status checker, and you'll also receive an email. I think it's all going to be online from now on. These are good questions. Anything else? What types of personal statement topics have you seen in the past? They really range. Usually a personal experience that has happened that, you know, has driven your passion and put you on this path towards law school is a pretty common direction that students take, that we see a lot of. Let's now know if you've seen anything out there. But I would say those are, you know, motivating factors, you know, life experience, you know, career changes, just explaining your motivations and reason for heading towards law, or what you're going to do with your law degree. If I am waitlisted, will I be able to take another LSAT or submit more LORs? Yes, absolutely. If you are waitlisted, I highly suggest reaching out, because we'll be able to talk with you about, you know, maybe what in your application, you know, needs attention. And you'll be able to, you know, take an LSAT or add letters of recommendation, or maybe you didn't submit a Y Buffalo statement and you want to submit that. You can also submit letters of continued interest while you're on the wait list, just so that we know that even though you're on the wait list, you still want to be considered, you know, up until a certain date, because we will still, you know, maybe be filling our class in June. I'm waitlisted. Oh, I already answered that one. You talked about housing. What are those options? So there are a few different housing options. There's on campus, which I would say a lot of our first year students take advantage of, especially if you're not from the Buffalo area. On campus, there is a, you know, apartment complex called Flint Village, and they'll reserve a building for law students. So it's a building with multiple apartments, and, you know, all law students will live there. So you kind of, you know who you're living with, you know, it's a quiet building. And then there's also, you know, other apartments across campus for graduate students, and you'll be with graduate students. And then there's also off-campus options. So for example, there's a off-campus housing complex called Collegiate Village. They are fully furnished, and they also have a shuttle that runs to and from the campus. We are a college town, so there are a lot of, you know, options around the area that you can still have transportation to and from school, that you can look at. And Kristen added some housing information in there as well. Thank you. During the review process, does the committee have a minimum LSAT score or GPA? No, we don't have a minimum that you have to hit. I would definitely take a look at our median, which our median and our percentiles, which are available on our 3-year JD class profile webpage. So that gives you an idea of our 25th and 75th percentile in LSAT and GPA. But there's no necessarily a cutoff. If you're below this, you know, you're not eligible. What's one advice you would like to give us to take while going through the application process, aside from deadlines? I would say to take your time and enjoy it, because it's going to be over fairly quickly, and then you're going to be in, you know, in the deep of it in law school. each part of your application is important. Don't leave it up to, your LSAT and your GPA. Take that time to perfect your personal statement, your Why Buffalo statement, making your resume, perfect and clean and look really nice, because they can see when, someone rushed through it versus someone who has been spending, a few months perfecting their application. You're welcome.
We have a hand up.
Yeah. Cambria, go ahead.
Hi, I'm not sure if you already answered this, but pertaining to waitlisting, if I were to get waitlisted, how long does it take to have a decision on whether or not I'll be accepted or not?
Yeah, so there's no good answer to that. I'm sorry, because it depends. If you apply really early on, and you're waitlisted fairly early, we won't close our application, or we won't close our waitlist until our class is full, which could be as late as, July or August. So definitely meet with us to go over your application. We'll have a better idea as the application cycle progresses, submitting those letters of continued interest. And you'll also be able to let us know how long you want to be on the wait list. If you want to wait till the end, or by this date, you would like to take your name off of it. So just stay in contact with us.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome. Kristen also added our waitlist facts, so definitely take a look at that as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome. These are all really good questions. I'm just going to give it another minute or two to see if anyone else's questions sparked something for someone else. All right. If no one has any last minute questions, I'm going to go ahead and just thank everyone for joining us for our application tips webinar during our virtual open house week. We still have 2 more events. We have our alumni panel very shortly today at 4:00, and then we have our student ambassador Q&A. Those panels are really great. You get to hear from people who went through the program, those who are now out practicing, and then students who are currently going through it. We have 1Ls, 2Ls, 3Ls from various concentrations. So if you haven't already signed up, please do so. And if you have, we will see you later today or tomorrow. I hope you all have a great day. Thank you again.